If you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, Darren T. How you doing, brother? Escape. Tab. This got to be the lamest way to do a live stream introduction, but hey, it works. So this must be the yeah, right on, man. Exactly. Isn't that the truth? Well, we're not actually in Krita today. We're in Tahoma, so I probably should ask you. Oh, good. That's awesome, dude. I'm glad to hear it. Are you I haven't been keeping up, so what are you doing these days? Last I knew you weren't really live streaming, or you were kind of stepping out much the way I did, and so I don't know what's been cooking with you. So if you care to share, cool. It's obviously public, so if you don't want to, that's okay too. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Okay, so I probably should open up the Vegas so that I can pull the edit up. So I'm fiddling around on my other screen, and we'll pull up Vegas so we can get a preview on the main screen here, so I don't have to keep switching screens on the live stream. Hope that makes sense. Darren, one question I do have for you is, when I upgraded from Tahoma, golly, I guess it would have been from 1.3 to 4. I was very pleased to find that simply merging my existing stuff folder with the one that was installed allowed me to completely restore my configuration in Tahoma 1.4. So that was very pleasant. I don't necessarily trust that will always work or whatever, but it seems to me, I'm looking at your comments. At this point, I guess my question is, at this point, is that generally good enough practice? Just replace the stuff folder? Or because you had a software tool for migrating from one version of Tahoma to another, and I don't think I have that on my system anywhere at this point. And that may be the safer choice. So if it is, then if you want to post a link, other people might benefit from that as well. So, where are we at? Darren is long-term break. It's kind of weird, man. It's like we both cranked for 3 years. And I don't know, I kind of was done myself, only because, not that I didn't really enjoy it or want to do it, but I just really wanted to see if it was going to turn out to be, it's a big commitment. There's an import option in file preferences. You know what? Maybe that's actually what I did, come to think of it. Okay, cool. All right. I might have actually done the import preferences thing, come to think of it. You're moving fast. It's hard to remember. But yeah, once I release Salt and Light, I'm like, I gotta wait and see. And the big problem now is that, I kind of was talking on the live stream. It might have been the one you were on the other day, and it might have been last night. I don't know, but I was talking about the fact that, like in trading stocks, by the time you kind of know what's going on and get your bearings, the opportunity has already happened. That doesn't mean it's passed you by and it's gone, but you definitely didn't, get the sweet spot. And so that's really the main problem with Salt and Light, is that, we kind of now have a track record that says, okay, this is actually worth doing in terms of, royalties. So, the problem is the time it'll take to create another episode, and then you've got about 3 to 4 months. Once I deliver it to the distributor, you're looking at 3 or 4 months for it to actually land on all of the streaming platforms, Amazon Prime, Tubi, blah blah blah. So, okay, Darren's got a few comments here. Yes, I will do that, and Maybe I should do that publicly, frankly. You know, and I may have done the same thing actually on Linux. I was really, really happy to see there was an app image for Linux. For those who don't know what an app image is, it's essentially a portable application on Linux where all the dependencies that the program needs to run are actually all rolled into a single executable. And I've always been big on you know, portable applications. So new version, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Not for installing during the stream. Well, I could, because what I would do is I would actually put it in a separate folder and call it Tahoma 1.5 and then run the import program and then run it just to make sure everything ports over. I would not overwrite 1.4 to try that. So if you know something I don't know whereby that's still kind of dangerous, say the word. Okay, cool. Okay, so what do we got? We were working on this shot. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I could switch screens. Actually, before I do that, probably should turn my webcam back on. Hey, here I am, a little older and grayer than I was when I started live streaming a long time ago. Okay, boom, here's Vegas. So I'm going to take this whole cluster right here and turn on the normalized switch so the volume is kind of similar to the rest of the show, and then just dial it back to that level. So the audio quality is probably going to be winky because I recorded it with this very headset mic. You know, I just wanted to put some audio in so I've got something to play the animation against and see if it's working.
Help her escape?
And by the way, don't forget, Darren, that Vespar is kind of sort of supposed to be your voice.
Morning. Are you trying to help her escape?
She's here somewhere. I found this near her camp. Okay, now this is interesting.
Help her escape?
She's here somewhere. I found this near her campsite. Yeah, the attitude there is all wrong. He was much louder here than here, but that's okay. Here somewhere. I found this near her campsite.
Highness, where? What campsite?
There was a smoldering fire. You couldn't miss it.
And that blasted kid.
I mean, it's possible she came upon the campsite after Luka left. Okay, it feels pretty good. I mean, I like the timing of everything for this shot. So let me switch screens again. And then I'm going to switch so I can see the chat. Yeah, install to a different folder. So let me see. There's only 2 people watching, so it's not like a demonstration is required. Okay, so I'm going to leave the voice, you know, the phonemes for last, particularly because, for those who recall, I do everything anime style, just because I don't think it's worth it to kill yourself. Well, there's actually 2 reasons. Number one, it's a lot more work to do voice, you know, to do the lip sync with phonemes. That is a lot more work, but it's not that much more work. But there's a more important thing, which is that all of the films and obviously cartoons that I've distributed get distributed worldwide, and they do definitely get translated into different languages. Portuguese, for example, is really popular because, you know, we see good sales in Brazil, you know. So if you're going to do lip sync on a cartoon, if it's too good, you've actually locked yourself into having it kind of look stupid when it's translated into a different language than English. So the Japanese figured that out a long time ago. Hence, when anime does lip sync, what you have is closed mouth, open wide, shut most of the way, open not so wide, shut half the way. So then this is what you get. You get and all dialogue is that, and it works. It actually works. So why fight it? Okay, so okay, so it does look like, I'll put this.
Darn that blasted kid.
Okay, this is cool. So I'm going to go ahead and re-render this so we can actually see what it looks like with the tighter drawings. All right, so that's Control-Shift-R for me. I don't know if that's a baked-in hotkey for Tahoma, but it's certainly what I've been using for kind of a long time. Let's see how that feels.
Darn that blasted kid.
I mean, it's possible she came upon the campsite after Luka left.
I like it. One of the better shots I think I've done in a while, to tell you the truth. Okay, so one thing I specifically wanted to do on this shot, and by the way, save early, save often, is test doing the ink very much the anime style, which essentially means with a pencil. For no other reason than I just kind of feel like trying it. If I use this brush here, I mean, let's be honest, it doesn't look much different, does it? Let's look at it closely, actually. The only difference is it's a little darker and it's a little more aliased. So probably the main reason to do it the way I am doing it would be this brush. There's a little bit of smoothing baked into it, which is good. But this brush essentially is not pressure sensitive for all practical purposes. It's supposed to be like a technical drawing pen. Whereas this is more like a pencil where you can sketch it in and then kind of tighten it up. And so that's basically the story behind that. I think they're both my paintbrushes as far as that goes. Cool, nothing going on in the chat. So I'm not missing anything. Okay, so, and by the way, on this screen, I should probably have that shot on the little window over there so I can just reference that for making sure I don't botch the characterization or something. Okay, that's pretty cool. So the older gentleman has a little visor kind of thing on his costume. So this is the part of the process where I do tend to get impatient, and it's understandable as a creative person. It gets fun, you know. It's like it's you start to see your little story come into life or whatever, and so it's easy to resent, frankly, the time it's taking you to do each step. And I do have a proclivity to start taking shortcuts. So there are two ways to look at this. One is the pragmatic animator says, hey, if I can bring digital tools to bear to somehow make my life easier or the quality of the final result better, then I'd be crazy not to do that. So there's that. However, and so it's not bad to creatively think about, okay, I don't know if I want that line in there. Whatever I'm doing to visually tell the story in animation, if it's possible for me to tell the story just as well, but in a more economical way, then again, it would be kind of dumb not to do that. The caveat is I don't necessarily trust myself to be honest with myself that this is really better, right? So the general rule is the slow way is the fast way. I would say, generally speaking, especially in the long run, anything in life, when you do it the slow way, the careful way, you wind up making fewer mistakes and redoing less, blah, 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 blah. It's just a good rule, I think, I found, is that the fast way is often the slow way because of mistakes. And the slow way ultimately is more satisfying, too. for me, that's manifested very much in the form of making corrections. So if I'm drawing in my, on my, I do journaling and stuff and draw cartoons on basically a clipboard with graph paper on it, And when I'll be drawing, and if it's just like you feel it, there's one line that just is not right. It's out of place. Obviously, flipping is really important too. Golly, you can see things by flipping that you just cannot. It'll just slip by you until you flip. And then all of a sudden you go, whoa, that is not symmetrical. I have been improving, though, I will say. I've been improving at drawing symmetrically. Just free drawing. My ability to be symmetrical has improved, I would say, in the last couple of years. Okay, yeah, no chatter. Okay, this guy's beard, honestly, based on the older... This is actually wrong, unfortunately. I'm going to have to extend this. His beard is supposed to be longer. So this is an interesting moment here, because now I need to remember to make that correction on every single frame of this guy. Okay, so this is interesting too. Is this the inside or the outside? And should there be sort of a lip to this cloth? In other words, let's just say on the inside it's in shadow, but on the outside it's like this bluish color. I would say this is, it feels like it'd be the inside. But what that means for me is the following. I'm going to say, let's extend. And I got to tell you, this is the part of animation actually and drawing that has become really fun for me. That's really made it worth doing is corrections. It's actually fixing mistakes like what I'm doing right now where I'm going, okay. It's like the engineering of this drawing was a little off because actually this needs to come out a little further to make room for this lip here, this little strip of cloth. If I put it on the inside, we're going to wind up with a stupid looking tangent right here where it happens to run right into the edge of his mustache or something like that. And that's just kind of nonsensical. Granted, however, this should probably be a little more bulbous. But I would say that's a function of patience. So maybe somebody who's a millennial out there. Hey, Rover. Never seen you before, I don't think. So welcome to the podcast, the live stream.
I don't do the podcast thing. It's not what I do.
Actually, for all practical purposes, this kind of is a podcast. I should just go to my Anchor account and echo the audio. Problem is, sometimes the rants and raves are quite interesting and useful, and often they're not. And they're usually not cogent enough to justify turning them into a podcast. Let's see. N key to see at actual size. Okay. So that revealed one issue right there. And yeah, I guess this just kind of flows under that. But see, that's still wrong. That's what I mean by engineering. Look at this. This is wrong. Okay, if this really was like this, then there would actually be a cloth extension down to here overlapping that garment he's wearing. Yeah, here we go. That's making a little more sense. So do you use cutout puppets as well, or just frame by frame? Hey, Chiziapo, by the way. Hey, Chris K. What episode? I'm working on episode 3, Chris. So episodes 1 and 2 you can watch on Tubi or obviously the Encourage TV YouTube channel, because that's the YouTube channel for my distributor, for those who are wondering. So the other 2 episodes have been out pretty much on all the major platforms. Amazon Prime. Frankly, most of my viewership has been coming from Amazon Prime, it turns out. I just found that out talking to my distributor the other day, so I guess I could recap that story a bit. But okay, so Rover, to answer your question, yeah, okay, cool, Chris. Okay, to answer your question, Rover 259 Wild, I don't do cutout in an animation in the sense, so that the aesthetic that I'm going for generally was inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender. So in terms of style and, that's kind of where I landed. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is as good as that, but I'm trying. And there's, the anime out there by like Gainax, the guy, Gurren Lagann, Kill La Kill, basically Yo-Yo Shinari stuff. As far as anime goes, I really love that visually, and I like that type of a style. You kind of see it actually a little bit in this guy's eyes. But overall, the aesthetic is kind of like Avatar. And so because of that, I do ink and paint. I don't economize as well as I could if I was doing more puppet type animation. And so by puppet, I'm assuming, oh really? Tubi just recently came to the UK. Tubi is an interesting story because it was started by some guys whose experience was actually in advertising, ad agency work, I think. And anyway, it's a great platform if you want a free source of lots of, pretty good content that you don't have to pay for. Now you have to sit through ads, obviously. So anyway, when you talk about puppet animation, I assume you are thinking, not necessarily thinking South Park, but I assume you're thinking like Family Guy. In other words, a situation where the characters could, or actually, what's sort of the teen, I think there's like a Teen Titans cartoon, some DC thing or something, that's where you can tell it looks like it was done with Anime Studio Pro or something like that, where you've got like vector art. It's usually 3/4 view, so the characters are always kind of doing this. They're always in the same orientation, but they're very articulate, right? So I would not call that puppet animation. I would call that rigged animation, particularly because you can create static imagery of a front view or a profile or whatever, and you can build a lot more flexibility into a rigged approach. But the overall aesthetic, the look and feel that I was going for with this show kind of demanded that I do it the hard way and basically frame by frame ink and paint. So now, the more complete, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Teen Titans Go. I like that. I love that style too. On PBS Kids, the quintessential example of the style I was just describing would be Wild Kratts. Wild Kratts is totally that. Really articulate characters, really well animated, but always in the same 3/4 view. When they turn their head, you can tell they just flipped it, kind of thing, Anyway, so this is a little more time consuming, but you get what you get. Okay, so it would probably be prudent, by the way, to take this and put it in a separate layer, because this is going to, I shouldn't have made that line that coarse. This is the other soldier in the foreground, and he's going to be overlaid over the first several frames of this guy, moving his head. So we might as well put this in its own layer, so we only have to draw it once. Okay, so the other way that I'll economize, I'm actually going to demonstrate this really quickly here for Rover. Is the Loud House rigged? I have no idea, man. No idea. And by the way, Rover 259 Wild, I just said man. I don't actually know that you're male. I'm kind of assuming that, and that might be rude on my part. I'm not sure. So, anyway. Okay, so, and then this. I just made a critical, horrible error. That needs to be on this layer. You big dummy. Okay. And so now I'm going to say I can probably get away with something like that. I don't need to get real busy with his arm in the background and stuff like that. Let's assume that that's the case. So now this is going to be his head covering, And essentially, that's all we need to see. TV show on Nickelodeon. Yeah, I've never seen it. Never seen Loud House. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate, to answer your question more completely and correctly, I'm going to show you what I actually do. Okay, and it would be something like this. In this case, let's just say for the moment that this is going to be deemed to be his skin color, okay? And right there you can kind of see the flaw in this approach. But you can, in Tahoma, of course, you can always hit the V key, and it gives you the ability to paint like a paintbrush. So this is definitely the disadvantage of using an anime style. You know, what are they doing? You know, they're still animating, I think. I mean, probably less than ever, but animating on paper and then scanning it, right? And so the ink is actually pencil lines. And so, anyway, what am I jabbering about? Well, when you have that more delicate, quote-unquote, ink line, you get the problem. You can see right here where you have to do some touch-up to make it, you know, to make it fill properly. So, it's just the price you pay. It's not a big deal. In fact, at size, you probably wouldn't even notice it, actually. As you can see, when I scale this back to actual size, can you see the little white specks? No. So, this is really just me saying, hey, let's do what I said and take the slow path. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in his eyes and then do kind of the obvious thing, which is change these colors to what they're actually supposed to be. Now, I'm moving quickly here, so these colors are not actually exactly what they're supposed to be. I don't want to take the time, because I'm doing a little demonstration here. I'm not going to take the time to import a still frame from the, well, maybe I could, actually. I could do it this way. Hang on. Poof. Okay. Okay. Now let's go back to Tahoma, because I forgot. We can actually cut and paste from the clipboard here, so let's try that. Yep, that worked. Okay, cool. So there's our reference image. Let's put this at the bottom of the stack instead of the top of the stack. And then this guy right here, we can hit the the R key, and sample that color, and instantly he's changed color. Now, is this actually technically really accurate to what it should be? I'm not so sure. Reason being that there may be some, okay, that was dumb, some color correction in the final edit of the show, and so I may somewhat be working against myself here in terms of color, but we'll see. Let's not sweat it too much. All right, so we're going to take this, put that there, and I'm going to add this color, color 0. Okay, I guess color 0 is the transparent one, so I need to add another color. So I'm going to grab this and then go here, grab that, hit the R key so I can sample the correct color right there. And now I basically have this guy's colors in order. So this is probably another good illustration of, you know, people like, why are you using Tahoma today instead of Krita? Just some things are easier, you know, in one program or the other. That's about the size of it. Okay, so I'm going to get this all filled in. I don't like this. This feels a little dark to me. And frankly, this does too. I would really rather let the lighting effects sort of carry the day. I mean, for sure, when I'm looking at that screen and I'm looking at this, all of the colors seem darker. So I might be getting fooled here a little bit by a... But at the end of the day, what matters is how it feels. That's it. What it looks like, you know, viscerally. Because that's what people will ultimately, you know, sort of respond to. Okay, so we're going to desaturate this. So, Rover... Yeah, I remember Danger Mouse. I watched it in the, well, it would have been in the 80s, actually. I used to Let's use it. Then OpenTunes has errors. Yeah, I mean they all have their issues for sure from time to time. All right, let's take this and then we'll go fill this, and then we want to basically lighten that up, push it slightly more towards the tan/brown. There we go. Fill that, fill that, fill that. Okay, so now I'm going to save my work and I can show you what I was talking about. So now the puppet thing, I am not actually going to do too much with right now, but the way I would do the whole puppet thing would be, I would just very quickly do this, hit the X key, create a mesh, create an anchor for the character. Let's say, let's kind of guesstimate where his neck would be, kind of thing. Boom. I haven't actually done this in a while, so let me think about this. This is kind of interesting because you would really want to sort of encompass this. So this is a horrible example because of the way like where his neck is, the beard and stuff, they all overlap. And but let's just, we'll play with it. We'll play with this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put in these little helpers and then switch this to, whoops, not create mesh. You silly goose. Animate. That's pretty much it. So I'll have many situations where I'll take a character and okay, why is it anchoring on there instead of here? That's kind of annoying, but we can fix that very easily, I believe, by going, let's move this up and this back. So the whole idea is to basically have all of these little helpers kind of, okay, that's actually kind of annoying. So it's turning here. Okay, well, we're going to allow this to be a little exercise in fiddling with Tahoma's plastic tool. So the way I would solve the problem that I seem to be having is this. I would probably put some helpers like here. Boom, boom. So I'm basically creating a border that protects this region down here from turning, so that when I turn this, it's limited to just this region up here. So now, as you can see, this would be an example of what one might call puppet animation, but it's just a quick and dirty way to add subtle movements without having to completely redraw the character over again. That's all that is. So anyway, I'm gonna actually see how much undo I have. I'm sure I don't have enough, but if I can, I'll just roll back to before I added the mesh. And if not, I'll just delete the mesh layer because I really didn't want to use plastic tool on this guy. No, now there you go. No more undo operations available. So the one thing that I got down to the very last step and it ran out of undo. Kind of funny. Okay, so one day soon I will make a fan-made Danger Mouse episode along with the Powerpuff Girls in the Loud House. Well, Rover, you just do that, my friend. You do that. My best advice as a ostensibly professional creator of cartoons is don't talk about it too much. Only a little. And only to people mainly who can help you in some way. Other than that, just do it. And the reason for that is that if you talk about it too much, you tend to diffuse the energy that should go into doing it. It's kind of a weird thing. I've noticed this in many areas of life, is that if you talk about it too much, you kind of, let's see, let's go B key. You kind of, well, okay, to the what, here's, this is, yeah, I've watched Powerpuff Girls back in the day. Okay, so there are really good examples other than myself that I can think of this, but basically, here's the thing. if you have something that is significant, that's important to you, that you want to do, to create for whatever reason, like your fan animation, what you find is that every day you've got a certain amount of attention energy to spend, and you give that attention energy to something. Everyone does. The strange thing about creativity and goals is that very few people set a goal to do something for purely pragmatic reasons. You know, the most pragmatic reason would be, well, I'm going to put it to market and sell it in some way or whatever. In other words, it's not for the love of doing it necessarily. Okay? Creative people tend to be the opposite. But we're sensitive souls. The problem with being sensitive souls is that we are, by definition, also the type of people that are very much seeking affirmation. We're not just seeking profit. We're seeking affirmation. We're seeking recognition to a degree. What we tend to crave is for somebody to come along and go, dude, that's awesome. You can do this. You're doing a great job. Just keep going. Rock and roll, man. Right? And that kind of energizes us, and then we try a little harder, and we keep going, blah, 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 blah. So, if you enter the arena of creativity and you announce publicly what you're going to do, I've seen this happen over and over and over and over and over again. Once you announce publicly what you're going to do, like actually you just did, one day soon I will, okay, you got to realize the rest of the world's going, okay, Rover, we'll believe it when we see it, okay, thanks for telling us. But that's the way the world views it, because everybody's got their own things that they're interested in, or everybody's got the same needs that we have, right? So here's the problem. The problem is when you announce publicly what you're going to do, what you're doing is you're inviting congratulations and enthusiasm from your community. And the problem is, and this has been studied by psychologists and proven to be true, the dividend that you get from people going, oh yeah, man, that's cool, great, do it. It sounds like fantastic. Once you feel that, the motivation to actually do it goes gone. Because we're sensitive souls, and much of the reward we were actually looking for is a reflection back on ourselves from our community, from our peeps. So it's dangerous to announce what you're going to do as opposed to just go do it, kind of thing. And very, very few people follow that rule, frankly. Very few people. So, a lot of people talk, and that was the wrong brush. And of course you want to be, you want to be nice, you want to be encouraging, blah blah blah, that's all fine. So this is not in any way an indictment or criticism of the idea, not even slightly. But of course, over the years, I have witnessed that, as others here probably could testify. If Darren's still around, he could tell you. You see it a lot where people will, and actually I think I am going to do, let's do that. In other words, what you do actually find is that the people who talk about what they're going to do almost never actually do it. Almost never actually do it. It's statistically. Most people that talk about what they're going to do just wanted the reward of everyone thinking it was cool, and there's no incentive to actually do it, which seems a bit silly. But that's interesting, because it shows you, it does, we can have compassion for that, because it does show you what people are actually about. What people really want is to feel safe, basically, to feel encouragement or enthusiasm in this journey that they're on, especially now in the AI space. So now I'm kind of rambling because I'm drawing and I'm actually getting into the alpha zone here. So I'm going to just keep rambling while I doodle. let's see here. Notice I flipped it. Let's see here. Squander Force. I find it fascinating that you seem to mostly work in raster levels. Preference? Yes. All of the above, actually. Number one, stability. There is no contest. There's no contest. The vector levels have always been extremely crash prone. So that's one thing. Number two, I have nowhere near as much control over the lines using a vector brush. Not even close. So for a lot of things, vectors are absolutely the right answer. For something like this, it would look completely wrong. I mean, I could demonstrate, but why bother? If you know enough to ask that question, then you know what working with vectors is like. Now there are situations, for example, in Krita, I could see there are things that would be very cool if they were inked with vectors, probably using the Bezier curve tool. And you can't have, I'm really spinning off in different directions here, I know, but in Krita you cannot have animation keyframes on a vector level. But what you can do is, like, you could do a perfect ink job on a vector, on a a drawing. So you got a really crisp, nice vector outline. Then what you do is, you're probably, one of the reasons you're going to use vectors kind of speaks to what Rover was asking about puppet animation. The reason you use vectors is once you've inked it once, you can, if you thin out the nodes enough, you thin the nodes so that you only have the control points that you really need to describe your curves, then at that point you can actually just manipulate the individual nodes to shape that vector into a new, drawing or ink job or whatever. It just depends. And so one thing you can do in Krita is just copy the layer, make the adjustments, just make a stack of layers, and then you convert the stack of layers into paint layers once you're happy with them. Normally what I would do is make a copy of all the vector drawings, right? Copy them all into another group, and then convert the one group into raster layers or paint layers, and then that stack of layers can then be converted into animated frames. So that's how you get from vectors to truly animated frames in Krita. So obviously in Tahoma, theoretically, it's easier, but as mentioned, the stability factor is sufficiently egregious that way back when I first started and was using OpenTunes, actually, I got pretty burned by the vectors. And even when they got stable, it just didn't help that much because fundamentally they're still harder to control. There's way more delicacy in these lines here than I could ever get with vectors. Now, it's not that you couldn't. If you want to do the work, you can draw vector lines and then you can massage the thickness of the lines and taper them, and you can get very expressive with it, but it's just a hell of a lot of work, that's all. Way faster to just freaking draw it, So then the other question that comes up is, well, wait a second, Dave, if you're, the reason to use vectors, okay, and by the way, Squander Force, if you're still here, can you confirm if my understanding here is correct, if you agree with this? One of the key reasons one might want to use vectors is because for scalability. The idea is that I can draw this once and scale it to any size and it's still going to look right, whereas I'm going to lose some fidelity with pixels. Okay, so if you're still here, post in the comments. Is that one of the reasons why vectors are appealing for you? It certainly seems like a key reason to me. Now, we might find out here that Squander Force is no longer with us, but and that's okay. Okay, so we're right here. It should probably come like there. Let's hit the M key. Are we flipped? Yes, we're flipped. No, we're not flipped. Okay. So let's see. We go from this. Yeah, that's okay. So Squander says yes to be able to make small adjustments or skew. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just show that really quick. The tools in Tahoma are really good. Like PolyArc, I think, was a really good addition. I believe that's available on vector levels. In Krita, what I was talking about would generally look something like this. You'd use the Bezier curve tool, and then what you're doing is you're basically doing you're doing your inking this way. So it's not as controllable as Tahoma's PolyArc tool. Okay, but if this was a vector layer, actually I hit the wrong thing. Add a vector layer. On the vector layers, it's kind of the same thing, except that you have editability. So obviously you can grab this here. And now what I meant by thinning was that on a vector layer, if I had used this brush, it's going to have a shit ton of nodes in it. And so you find yourself oftentimes going through and just selecting nodes and deleting them. And it's actually having a hard time keeping focus on the ones I've selected for some reason. It's just kind of stupid, but well, and that's again one of the reasons nobody really seems to have gotten the vector thing correct. That's my opinion. Flash came as close as anybody. Like the versions of Flash I used, they came as close to getting to a very fluid, organic, responsive treatment of vectors than any program I've used. Now, there may be other stuff out there that's better or as good, like particularly I'm guessing, oh shoot, what's the one they use for tons of anime these days? Darn it, I have the program, I just never used the darn thing. And I cannot remember. The guys that do Anime Studio or Moho also have this other program that's actually used a lot in Japan nowadays. I think it's used a lot, and I can't remember what the name of it is. You guys know what I'm talking about. So anyway, what if you're going to think about this, you're going, well, does any of this actually matter? And it matters if the loss of fidelity is important to you. Is that a big deal? And the answer is maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Harmony, okay. I have not used. You're talking about Toon Boom. I haven't used that in holy cow years. I mean, I had a crack of it years and years ago, just to play around and see if it was worth considering buying or whatever. And it really didn't sell me, So I have to say I'm pretty pleased with the job I've done here maintaining the continuity. And by the way, I also want to say I may render this whole thing flat like this with no shadows or whatever, render the individual layers, bring it into Krita and do the shadows there. So I bounce between the two a lot. One of the things I really like about Krita is that I can pull up a shot like this. Check this out, guys. This is really a significant benefit. Okay, so here's Tobias. Okay, Tobias is in a group. Well, guess what? I can take and Control C. I can copy the group, go over to Tahoma and paste that in. And the actual group will transfer in. Now why? Okay, so now I said that's what works. Where the heck is Tobias? It's like I'm saying, this is what you can do, and yet, for some reason, this is the one time it doesn't seem to work. That's funny. Let's try this one. Control C. So that's the guy. Okay. So probably what I did wrong is I should have soloed it. So what I have to do, I know what I did wrong. Okay, so you grab a group, you hit Control A, that's the key. So it's all selected. Control C, and let's try that one. Ready? Ta-da. So what's my point? My point is that the interaction between Tahoma and Krita is pretty fluid these days. Now, the one thing you can't do is take this piece of art and actually cut and paste it right back into Krita. It will not paste properly, unfortunately. At least I'm 90% sure. Now, maybe something's changed, so let's try it. Let's do the S key. Okay, and of course it kind of boogered the selection. Do the S key, Control C, and let's just see what happens. Because basically, Krita's just a way more sophisticated paint program, you know? So I'm going to start a new, and I'm actually going to create from the clipboard and see what happens. It seems to be confused. So yeah. So this is for me a bit of an omission that if the Tahoma developers are out there, take note. I would really think it would be great if when we take a raster level, there's two things that I would do programmatically. Number one, if it's a raster level, then I would say if you use the S key to make a selection, then whatever you select is converted into just a plain old pixel grid and can be cut and pasted like a ping image into any other program. That would be nice. If what you select is a vector, then when you hit Control C, theoretically, it would be essentially rendered in the background and then made available in the same way. That would be a benefit for sure, to be able to go back to Krita from Tahoma. It's kind of a one-way direction, but if you're willing to render to disk or to a RAM disk or something and then drag it into Krita, then you're fine. And the other thing you got to remember too is that's a really valid strategy, because if you render to a RAM drive, once you paste it into Krita and save the Krita file, it's baked into the Krita file. So if you shut off your computer and the RAM drive gets flushed, it doesn't matter. It's still saved effectively. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Just because I love you. Okay, so at 11:08, Squander Force said LOL. So I have no idea what you were LOLing. You might be LOLing something I said that is like so stupidly obvious that anybody with a brain would have already known it and, you know, didn't really need to say it or something. I don't know. Yes, the world of animation. What a hoot. So for those who are new or aren't in the loop, here's what happened. I spent between 2 and 3 years creating 2 episodes of Salt and Light. And then when I released it, I had a relationship with a film distributor from years ago because I've written and directed 8 feature films. And 3 of which are pretty good, actually. And have been reasonably successful. And so I had a relationship. And so when I made the cartoon, I already knew I had global distribution set up kind of thing. So, but once I had done it, because it was so freaking much work, I said, all right, okay. I was going to dovetail, but I won't. So the story is that I said, I'm going to wait and see how the sales on this show are before I sort of like commit to doing more episodes and all that sort of thing. And so it kind of limped along for, what, 1.5 years or something? I don't know. It's been quite a while. So it limped along for quite a while, and then all of a sudden the sales numbers were really kicking up like a lot, like crazy. Like I'm like, whoa, how the hell did I wind up with this check? And so then I wanted to confer with my distributor and find out what the heck was going on. And what we found out is it's basically being driven by Amazon Prime, and the basic gist is when, in his experience, if Amazon Prime if a title starts to really grab on Amazon Prime, it tends to get grabbed and stay grabbed for a while. Now, it's not forever necessarily, but so in other words, there's a window of opportunity here that says, okay, if you're going to make more episodes of the show, you better freaking do it now. Get on it, because the window of opportunity may close. And I can share from experience that my most successful film, I did not. Okay, so I was paid to make the movie, so I didn't own the rights to the movie. The movie made like $1 million, but because I didn't own the rights to it, I didn't make that much. I made about 5% of the net, I would say, over the life of the picture. But anyway, so my mistake was I should have immediately followed that film up with a sequel where I did own the rights, which I could have done, because I did own the rights to all the intellectual property that comprised the movie, if that makes sense. So instead, I made a different picture, and what happened was the window of opportunity for that film, for the sequel, somewhat closed because the retail DVD market went to poop. It just went to poop. All the major retailers went belly up, and this was, this has been 10 years ago now. And so it was a real mistake not to make the sequel immediately. Okay, I don't remember my hotkeys here, and I don't remember my reset. If Darren is here, Darren, how do I reset the... I wonder if you search Chronicles of Melchizedek, but it could be also that it's not yet available in the UK. Maybe their library on the UK side isn't as complete as the US side, maybe? I don't know. But since you're here, is there a hotkey to, like when I've inadvertently rotated this, as you know, if you flip the screen, you can set it correctly, and then if you flip again, it's flipped back, and it becomes it's a bit maddening. Okay, right click and see reset. So I'm going to hit reset. Right click, reset view. So that says Shift Alt R must be a hotkey that I did. So I'm going to try this. This is okay, classic case of hotkeys that don't actually work. Okay, that's all right. You see that all the time in Alt Shift R. Yeah. Actually, reset rotation. So let's reset the view. Okay, that seems to have helped. Okay, it looks like reset view is the answer. So I'm going to booger this up again just for kicks and giggles. Okay, I see what it's doing. It's actually reversing the angle of spin. So this should be reset view. Okay, Alt 0. So here's hoping. Yep, okay, cool. Thank you, Darren. There's the answer. What was I talking about? I'm sure it was very important. Oh yeah, I was talking about why the heck I'm back here doing Salt and Light again. So that pretty much told the story. I didn't want to make the mistake I made back then. Now, ultimately, I made a sequel to the film that was successful, and it's done really well, but it would have done a lot better if I'd released it in like 2012, for sure. Because it's a chick flick horse movie, so it was sort of made for the DVD marketplace. It's one of the great oversights in my creative career, I would say. But this time I thought, well, it is fun making cartoons. And what an encouragement to, I think I may have mentioned this yesterday, but since I'm a blabber, I'll talk about it anyway. I'm just putting in mark lines here to guide what I'm doing. But yeah, I think I made the point last night that, it's kind of amazing to think, you can make this fair to middling cartoon. It's not like it's the greatest thing ever. I don't want to say it's exactly bad or anything, but, nothing special. And it's very cool to think, okay, not only when I started making this cartoon did I choose to make the cartoon I wanted to make as opposed to what the distributor was kind of looking for, which was more oriented towards really little kids. How cool to sort of do what I thought would be more fun for me, which is aimed at an older audience, like it's probably aimed at 8 to 15, but adults can enjoy it too, is the idea. And frankly, I think the story will become more sophisticated as it continues to develop, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we have to have this. Okay, so Ross was talking about onion skins last night, and I was saying I don't usually use onion skins. I don't find them that. They usually clutter up the screen more than they help. But yet I will turn them on. Like, right here, I might turn it on here just to get a frame of reference, like right there, to see that. Actually, that's a good example of where I'm going to hit the S key, and I'm just going to grab these guys, and then I'm going to hit Control and push that up just a little bit. So that circles back around to the vector question. What I have found over, we're talking about, many hours of animating, producing a lot of footage. I have never, ever seen the loss of fidelity due to scaling pixel art. I've never, ever seen that to be a problem in any way, shape, or form. Ever. You can sharpen. I think I talked a little bit in a live stream a couple days ago about how, if you're throwing a baseball, if you come back here, and so this position is kind of locked. You want this drawing to be sharp. All of the time that the arm is doing this, the lines can be horrible. They can be blurred like crazy because you can't see it. I mean, it's moving. It's motion blur anyway. So then the question is, when does sharpness actually matter? And the only time sharpness matters is when things stop moving and you need the audience to have a moment to digest what they're seeing. At that moment, that's when you may want to either sharpen or even redo the ink on that frame. But all the path in between this pose and that pose, you gain nothing by... so then the question becomes, well, okay, there's nothing wrong with using vectors. So if you're going to do that, then did the vectors somehow make the path between those two poses easier? And usually the answer is, if the basic orientation of the character is two-dimensional, like a perennial three-quarter view, and it's just like a rigged character doing this kind of thing, then in that scenario, that approach, the rigged approach or the vector approach, can definitely pay for itself. If there's any of this turning, orientation turning in 3D space, all that benefit goes out the window because you have to redraw it. So then someone will come into the chat and say, well, yeah, but you can use Blender for that. You can create 3D and render it 2D. Yeah. And I say, okay, you do that and show me the result after you've done it. Because, yeah, you can do that, and some people do that. But usually what you find is it's pretty much just as fast to kind of do it the hard way, actually. Because you have to do so much setup to do a 3D rig, to create 2D art with 3D. You have to do so much setup. You got this incredible time expense at the beginning just to set it up. And then the question for me becomes, does that rig fail ever? Because if that rig fails at all, if there's any situation where I have to deviate from using that rig, then all of that setup benefit kind of went out the window, you see? So you want to really be sure that this is the right path before you go saying that, that it is the right path. And I've never heard anyone say such a thing who actually had produced any credible volume of animation, actually. So, but that's YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about a lot of things. And of course, if you're me, you go, yeah, okay, that's cool. That's exciting. Sounds great. Now go do it and show me that it actually is an effective strategy. And then, of course, I don't really actually say that to people because that would be kind of rude. But in my mind, that's what I think because I've been that guy in the past. I've been that guy that's talk, and when are you going to fucking do something, And I really have been that guy. I remember when I decided to make a cartoon in the first place, I'm like, all right. I mean, going back to high school, it was something I wanted to do. It was interesting to me. Certainly in the late 90s, I was dicking around with Hash Animation Master, and I was an early adopter of Blender in like 1999. I was using Blender. And fact is, I've mentioned many times, it's not much of a claim to fame, but I am the first person in the world to create a Blender training video. I know that's a fact because back in 2000 there was like nobody doing that. Actually, should I be putting his I should probably be putting his pupils in a separate layer. Well, the other character, I know I need to do that. For now, I'll leave this as is. No big deal. Yeah, because that's where it switches to the other characters. So, but I mean, it's really a weird dance I'm doing when I talk about this stuff because I'm trying to encourage other people to be creative and chase their muse and believe that it's possible. That's the kind of point I was getting around to earlier. Is when I look back at this and I go, a year and a half, 2 years after releasing this cartoon, which is just an okay cartoon, it's actually making enough money that if I had a dozen episodes out there, I would easily be paying all my bills. That's amazing. Think about that. It's like the universe just said, look, Dave, just keep writing. Just write. Write and draw and create the music. Do the voices. Just do it. Just do it. Just don't stop. Just keep going. Be tenacious. Be a bulldog. Refuse to quit. And that's the only person that can get the reward. You just cannot get the reward unless you pay that price. And the price is first to start, then to finish. Everything in between, anything you say is meaningless compared to finish or start and then finish. Everybody's good at talking. Some people are good at starting. Few people are good at finishing. That would be what my spin on it. Very few. And you can make the argument, and it's a legitimate argument, that most cartoons or complex productions of any kind are really group affairs, okay? Okay, I just noticed a problem. So if you're saying, well, I need a team, that's fine. That most people do. I mean, in that respect, I am a bit of an anomaly. There aren't very many people that can literally do everything. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's just I can't help it, just who I am. I've been motivated by art and music and cartoons and funny voices and all this crap for my whole life. I can't help it. And it turns out if you're sufficiently interested in something and you give it some attention, you can actually kind of sort of get good at it-ish. So I find it baffling why more people don't. And I think the reason is that it's just because it's hard. It just takes a lot of effort and willpower. And then, people who are progressively minded like me will also complain that, well, people are so tapped financially and stuff these days, inflation and all, that it's just really hard to get a leg up and, go out and do something that you're not necessarily ever going to get paid for, or at best it'll take a long time. And that's true. That is a legitimate problem. But I don't think it's all important. I don't think it's determinate. I think at the end of the day it turns out, and it's probably always been the case, is that people who really want to do XYZ are going to fucking find a way to do it. They're just going to find a way. Walt Disney, what did he do? He just found a way. And he did need a team, and he did need money. Okay, this is a great example of where turning this on could be quite helpful. In fact, let me see here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back here, just select this line, this whole little batch here, Control C, and I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to turn this. Okay, so I'm going to squunch it a bit and just move it over, and then I will, let's turn the onion skin back off, and then just clean this up here. Sometimes you do that, you just like sort of cheat a little bit to, it can help actually preserve the continuity for one thing. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so then this, so yeah, those all seem like pretty short little divots there. So this is the part that's a bit of a pain because, it's meticulous. What time is it? 11:30? Holy cow. Golly, is anybody still here? Looks like I've got 4 people watching. Okay, so now I'm going to rewind this. Yeah, that worked. That worked. That definitely worked. Okay, so okay, now this, yep, we'll just go to here. Squander Forest. Calpac is back. Hey, Calpac. Hey, Awkward Penguin. What have you been doing, Awkward Penguin? I seem to remember, I'm looking up your YouTube channel like right now. I seem to remember you had some cool stuff out there you were doing. Maybe we've had this conversation before. When I first started doing animation, I'm not finding the Awkward Penguin channel. It doesn't matter. But I remember when I first started doing animation, there were a few people who were like the early lurkers when I was live streaming, and I think you were one of them. Way the hell back in the day. So this would have been like in 2017 or something, actually. It's been quite a while. Haven't been active in a while. Okay. That is your prerogative, my friend. Okay, so I'm going to basically say this curvature right here. Nope, that's too wide. Erase that. Back to the B key. So I tell you, the message for me is, if you guys are out there and you're wishing you could create, be creators, as it were. I gotta say, man, you can. I've been doing it for 30 years. Back in the 90s when I said I really want to ramp up the radio jingles, it only took a couple months to find a few radio stations that would, let me create jingles for their advertisers. When I started making movies, it took about 2 years to bump into a relationship that ultimately led to the 6-picture deal that I had. And and nobody really gets those anymore. hell, actually, even back then, hardly anybody ever did. It was really just one of those flukes of life where there was this sort of fledgling streaming service, really, is what they were trying to do. It ultimately failed, and they wanted to have exclusive original content on their platform, you know. And so they contracted with me to create 6 very low budget feature films. Pretty weird. And the reason that happened was because a friend of mine and I had made one movie by ourselves, no money or budget or anything. We just did it. But because we had actually completed something, that made us, I suppose, a credible consideration as for whom this platform would contract with. Like, who are we going to have do it? Well, there's this Dave guy that made this one little sort of rinky-dink movie. And then there was another guy who I couldn't even tell you who the other guy was. They basically contracted with the 2 of us. I think it was the same deal, 6 pictures a piece kind of thing. So I had to make, you know, the financial part of it's kind of interesting because basically I had to make it work. Okay, so this is kind of crazy. Back then, so they're paying me $36,000 to make a feature film. Now that's insane by any standard. So my mandate was to find a way to get $200,000 worth of production value on the screen for like no money. And the other problem was, and this is the really big problem, is that if I was actually going to make any money, I had to save it out of the budget. Okay? Understand? If it costs me $36,000 to make that movie, I walk away with 0. So that was an interesting challenge. I don't really miss it, to tell you the truth. It was a cool little season there. Well, you know, and plus the other thing is, I went through a divorce 11 years ago, and that was a pretty shitty time. And so if I'd have been more successful as a filmmaker, it would have just been more that wound up being split up in a divorce, you know, so kind of sucks, but life happens, man. Happens to a lot of people. Of course, I look back at it now and it's like, oh, I'm so glad that happened. That was actually the universe helping me out. All right, end key. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there, people. Okay. Let's go zooming in here. I think we can do this pretty simply. Just like that. And then we're going to have to put the lip sync in there. I'm going to go ahead and put in the... Okay, so we got 5 people here. So now here's the thing I'm curious about. If you guys are willing to tell me, this will be my market research for the day. Here's my question to you guys. And I know I've asked this in the past, but I'm going to say I think it's a good question, and the answers may change from time to time. So the question is, why the hell are you here? Like, what is it, as a creative person, what is it you're hoping to get out of, or what is it you enjoy about witnessing this process? I mean, I know I'll seed the discussion by saying this. When I watch like the behind the scenes of a show like there's good videos on YouTube behind the scenes of the making of like Kill la Kill or Little Witch Academia, stuff like that. I really love the when I get to see what you're seeing right now, where it's just the guy drawing and flipping and seeing it come to life, that's the part I like. To me, that's cool. It's a source of both of inspiration and encouragement and education, all in one kind of thing. So that's why I have enjoyed that type of content. But I'm always curious, like, what other people's reasons or motivations are, because oftentimes it's like it could be something I hadn't even thought of. Like maybe people hear it for some reason that wouldn't have occurred to me in a million years. Okay, so these little eyes kind of suck, actually. I'm going to leave them blank for the moment. I'm not feeling very in the zone for that. Getting two pupils to look like they are looking in the same direction is actually a heck of a lot harder than you might think. So it looks like nobody's going to answer the question, so that's okay. Apparently, it's just fun or something. Okay, so... Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so yeah, actually, the way this feels to me... Let's check this. Okay. I want this to be glaring. Yep. So you see what happened? The head turned, but the eyes didn't move as much as the head did. Now, they did lead, like the eyes turned more than the head here to lead the head. And then once the head got around, you see it kind of equalized. That feels pretty good. All right, now let's zoom out and probably be fun to talk about politics here. I think when I first came back, I may have mentioned this, but it's funny to me that as a progressively minded person here in America, it's kind of like my side had this smug attitude that all the people on the right were in an echo chamber. And I find it fascinating that it turned out we were the ones that were in an echo chamber, and this groundswell of progressive sentiment was kind of an illusion. It really wasn't anywhere near as prevalent as I thought. So I think that's kind of interesting. It's a great question. I want to ask myself when I've streamed. Yeah, exactly. You just wonder. Similar interests. Yeah, does give you inspiration, perhaps. And it's one of the reasons why I'm being a little more careful than I used to be, to really make sure the quality of what I'm doing is up to scratch, because there is no... let me think about how to say this. There's an argument to be made for economy, in the sense that, and I mean economy that actually compromises quality. There is actually an argument for that, for the simple reason that if you create something and it's either popular or successful or whatever your measure of that is, but technically it's basically a piece of crap, it doesn't matter. If the market says it's good, it's good, And there's more than one thing that builds entertainment value into a thing other than animation. Animation may in fact be the least important thing here, compared to both the voices, the characterization, and the overall feel of the storytelling, right? It's another reason why if people are starting to grab this show, I feel kind of bad about leaving them hanging with a storyline that, oops, I keep hitting the wrong key, with a storyline that really needs to continue. I mean, they're totally left hanging at the end of episode 2. And I hate to be so, greedy and selfish that it's like, well, I'm not going to make any more until I know this thing's going to make some bank. But that is pretty much what I did, if the truth be known. And the bottom line is, it did, so here I am. Okay, so this is actually a problem. I'm going to just get rid of this completely and start over. I got the curvature corrected. Isn't it amazing how something so small like this visor is actually taking a lot of the time? And the reason is because I wanted it to be oriented correctly on his forehead, and also I was winding up making the lines too thick and kind of messy. So let's see. Okay, so that's not perfect. There's kind of this little lip to it or edge that disappears here, but because he's in motion, it probably doesn't matter. And that is accurate to what was in the show before, in episode 2 or whatever, so. But I like it. I like this. I feel reasonably satisfied that I've done an okay job with this. Yeah. Continuity. If Ross was here, he'd probably agree. I'm doing a better job of this than I used to. I used to not. I honestly, I'm not proud to admit that the smoothness of continuity, character continuity from in a 3D turn here is probably one of the better versions of that I've done. Okay, so now I see one problem. Yep, one problem. See the eyes? The eyes are wrong. What I said I was doing, actually what I probably should do, yeah, I'm going to have to erase this. And now it's another one of those things that is surprisingly time consuming because it's such a small thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly put this in here and see if it looks right. So hit the N key. Yeah, that looks way better. Okay, so I wanted him sort of glaring from under his eyebrows kind of thing, but I just had the direction of it wrong. Okay, 6 viewers. Hey, great. You had to leave because you had things to do. Nothing wrong with that, man. Everybody's got stuff to do. Okay, so we got these little furrow right there. And now what we got to do is go to here and hit the B key. Zoom out. This needs to, okay, Darren, if you're still here, buddy, I don't remember. I know I can switch off I don't even know the terminology anymore. I don't even remember what they call it, the fact that you draw a frame here and it continues until you cut it off with something else. I don't even remember what it's called. Implicit hold. Okay, so implicit hold, what I want to do is I want to turn off implicit hold just for this column. Can I do that, or do I have to turn off implicit hold and then turn it on individually on the ones that I want it for? For those who don't know, by the way, Darren T, he is pretty much an OpenTunes and Tahoma 2D encyclopedia. He knows, like, whenever there's a question about process and procedure here, Darren will almost always know the answer. Okay, so this shot needs to end here. So the right mouse click, toggle. Implicit holds are for the entire scene. Yeah, but didn't there used to be a way to turn it on and off per? Okay, so I'm going to turn off implicit holds, and I think there's a shortcut to fill this in so that I don't have to, because if I take this and drag it down, it's going to move everything else down, as you can see. So I don't want to do that. Excuse me. So what I want to do is grab that area here, and I believe fill in empty cells. There we go. That's all I needed. Let's just do it that way. I've never been a huge fan of implicit hold, which is kind of weird because I know I do appreciate it in Krita, but so we'll just kind of go with that. This needs to be turned on, and this needs to fill in empty cells. I probably need to make a hotkey for this. Fill in empty cells, and actually this one could be cleared. I don't want to delete. Well, wait. It used to be if you deleted it would ripple, but nope, it doesn't anymore. So cool. Yeah, because I don't need the pencil drawing under there. I think you can just right-click on the last empty frame and choose the fill option. Okay. Fill in empty cells. Okay, now if I fill in empty cells, wait a minute. Let's see what happens here if I do it. Nothing. Okay. If I do it here, it just fills in that one. So I do need to select arrange. It appears. Poof. No biggie. I personally, maybe I'm a control freak, but I think I favor having a little more control. So there we go. Fill up to that frame. Okay. So now, I probably should put the pencil, or the ink, I should say, here on a separate, absolutely. It would be stupid to put it on the same column. Because the palette here is for the old guy, the old soldier. So why not give ourselves a different palette for the young soldier? Right? Of course. So, go to our Tighten Up brush. And here we have the same problem I described earlier where just trying to get the eyes to line up is actually a bit challenging. Okay, so now if something like this is a little loosey-goosey in execution, you know, that's okay. You can do that to a degree because the silly, sloppy look is sort of part of the charm kind of thing. Okay, so I'm doing the lines much lighter here. We're going to see how that plays, but what I basically don't want is a good solid dark line underneath his eyes. But I do need a border. Obviously you can use there's various ways. You could put a line in here that would allow the fill operations to work properly, and then the lines disappear after it fills. You guys probably knew that. So I'm trying to get the characterization here pretty precise because we're going to be working forward from here. We want to get off on the right foot, as it were. He says in the voice of Tobias. Tobias is one of my favorite characters in the show. Okay, now we have a lot of issues. I'm going to erase the mouth for a moment so we're not sort of fussing over the tilt of the mouth, but you can see this is horrible. So let's see if we can fix it to a degree with some of these digital tools. B key. Okay, I'm just going to erase this whole little section right here. And then what's bugging me is there is a real difference between these two curves. A big difference, actually. So I'm going to go M key. And what I'm going to do is try to kind of keep the same curvature from both orientations. Yeah, that is an improvement. That seems to be better. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. That runs all the way down to there. Then we can clean that up. B key. Okay. That goes like that, and that goes like that, actually. N key. Yep. That's basically what we need to have in there. This. Okay. Now, we should make the thickness relatively similar. I'm kind of looking at the earlier drawings to get a feel for like where the wrinkles and the edges go to. Poof, poof, poof. What I do is I draw a rough sketch in black, change the filter red or blue, then clean up in a different column. Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty close to what I do. I don't know why I like red as opposed to blue for pencil tests. Not a clue. I just do. And I've been doing it that way for kind of a while. There is no shortcut here, friends. Really. Okay. And okay. And oh, there it is. Okay, so now let's just look at this. All right, yeah, as you can see, I'll tell you the truth, guys. This is what I'm going to do. In this case, I'm going to cheat. Control C, Control V, flip it, and then move it over here. The fact that this is slightly lower probably doesn't matter. But I don't know. I guess that does look better, so we'll go with it. Okay, and you can see how off the nose is now. Isn't that interesting? It's just so amazingly hard to, like, symmetry is really, really, really hard. Maybe it's harder for me than some people because of dyslexia. I don't know. But it's only recently that I've started to become more consistent at drawing symmetrically without having to do a whole bunch of corrections. Kind of crazy. Okay, I think that's flipped, so let's go N key. Now I'm actually, I want to clean that up. Clean that up. Have you tried Blender Grease Pencil? Dude, come on. Seriously? Of course I use Blender Grease Pencil. I use Blender Grease Pencil all the time. Compared to, let's put it this way. It's a great question, actually. The Blender Grease Pencil, number one, you're going to get the advantages like we talked about earlier with vectors versus pixel art. Well, with the Blender Grease Pencil, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So that's a cool thing. Number two, in Krita, I can use liquefy. Whoops, I guess I have the wrong thing selected. I can use liquefy to manipulate things. As you can see, it's dogging it. Haha, no pun intended since it's a dog in the picture. It's dogging it because there are so many layers that it's having to calculate. So if I flatten it, okay, so this type of thing, changing the expression this way, not really a very good option in Tahoma. Tahoma doesn't really have something like that. With the Blender Grease Pencil, you can just do deformations. You know, you use the sculpting tool, in other words, and boom, you're complete flexibility. In terms of animation platforms, the flexibility to do everything you might want to do absolutely, by far, everyone should be using Blender. No question about it. You can use Krita or other paint programs for maybe background images if you don't love the UV editor and all of its paint tools. But insofar as the best animation tool between open source, Krita, Tahoma, Blender, by far Blender's the best. So why do you use Tahoma? Well, there are just certain things for the style of this particular show that just feel good to work with in Tahoma or Krita. And there's certain things like, let's say, particle systems. A flock of birds flies out from the bushes. In Blender, you have way more control over particle systems and what you're doing with them. But in Tahoma, it's like really freaking fast. Like you just set up a little 2-frame animation of a bird flapping and, you know, it takes 30 seconds to set up the particle system. So there's certain things that are just more efficient from a workflow, partly because the capabilities are less. You're more limited with Tahoma, but what it does pretty darn well, right? So, but this actually just came up, and somebody's going to object to the idea that using Blender 2.79 still, which yes, I admit it, for some things I do, right? So just like a couple days ago, boom. Okay, it couldn't find the image, so I can't demonstrate what I was going to show you. That's kind of too bad. But I don't know if it's because I moved some things around or what. But anyway, the other day what I did was I took this shot here, and I'm getting a lock. Here. Okay, so this shot here, right here. This shot here was done, I believe, in Krita. And then what I did was I brought this shot into Blender using images mapped to planes. So it animated the whole thing. Because remember, you can actually animate a whole show in Blender if you wanted to. It's a little clunky, but you can animate a whole show not even using the video editor, actually in the 3D space by mapping image sequences to, to planes. And then you've got all the flexibility to manipulate them in 3D space and all the rest. So anyway, with this, what I did was I used shape keys to make the leaves rustle. Like if you look at this corner right here, it's just subtle. I just wanted something that's like moving a bit. So it's just a noise modifier on a shape key is all that is. And then I figured when they come into the bushes, it would be nice if some birds or bats or something flew out, like disturbed by them. And so I used the Blender grease pencil to just whip some shapes down there real quick and
not a sign of Her Highness.
So then what I'll do is when I'll put in a sound like that, not exactly that, but something of that nature, we'll put in the soundtrack so you hear the flapping of wings or whatever, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm a huge Blender guy. It's just that what I'm doing right now is not quite so Blender centric. I'm going to save my work, by the way. I've had enough experiences where I have paid the price of not saving that. Let's just see what we got going on.
And that blasted kid.
I mean, it's possible she came upon the campsite after Luka
Okay,
left.
yeah, got it. Okay, so that was a little weird because of this. Right here. Fill in, where was that? Fill in empty cells. And then here to here. Fill in empty cells. Okay, yeah. There it is. All right. Poof. Now, when we put it back here.
And that blasted kid.
I mean, it's possible she came upon the campsite after Luka left.
Yeah, there you go. Can't argue with that. Looks pretty good. Just got to do a bunch of work, that's all. Doing all this silly ink and paint business. Okay, I think something here feels wrong, and I'm gonna instead of erasing it and redrawing it like an intelligent person would, I'm going to actually try doing it. I'm in the wrong layer. Sorry. Or level. I guess the proper nomenclature in Tahoma is level, not layer. Okay, so the problem is there's not really a good way to... you can kind of... it's like I was talking about liquefy. You can kind of make it work. If you hit the control key with the S key in Tahoma, you can come pretty close. And obviously, if you want the flexibility of liquefy, then you're generally going to be looking at using the plastic tool. So, just depends. Depends on what you're doing. Okay, now let's see. Let's start cranking up the pace here just a bit. B key. And what we want to do is, I'm going to go ahead and put in a key here and a key here. Might as well put in a key here, a key here, and I believe, yeah, well, we'll do them. We'll put the keys in, but these two are just slight modifications of the one up here. We're just adding the shoulder shrug. So, okay, so now we got that, and let's see, how do we want to do this? Nope. Yeah. I guess I need to crank myself around like this. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so this is a little off. Let's get started off on the right foot here if we can. That's better. Okay. And by the way, I'm going to say this is actually a completely legit way to animate, is literally go through and animate. This needs to be deleted, and Control C, Control V. There. I was using frame 5 here twice, and I had an extra unique frame in there. Legit way to animate, being one freaking line at a time. Seriously. Here's a line. Okay, here's a line. Yep, one line at a time, baby. Cool. Okay. Here I'm going to take and draw, put some guidelines in there. Alright. B key. Okay, let me just check that. Okay, so I had a Entschuldigen Sie bitte. That's German for excuse me. This is only on the screen for one frame, so I kind of have some flexibility. I hate to be disparaging or dismissive of any individual frame, but in fact, some are more important than others. I'm trying to draw this way too small, and it's like my stylus just doesn't want to cooperate. Okay. You can make 2.5D. Exactly. The shot that I did, was it yesterday? I don't think I did it publicly. Okay. It was this shot. This shot with parallax. To tell you the honest truth, this was done in Tahoma 2D by switching to the 3D view and then moving the layers, spreading the layers out in space so that I got some parallax. To tell you the truth, this shot would have been much easier to do and probably a hell of a lot more effective in terms of the parallax effect if I had done it in Blender. So I would have a layer for the background, Tobias, this guy, and this guy, and then use the grease pencil to just overlay the lip sync, animating directly onto the plane that was playing or held the image of this guy, you know, drawing. Because that's what I did. I split the shot. I cut and pasted out of Krita into Tahoma each of these 4 layers, each of which, of course, contained like a dozen sub-layers themselves. But, yeah, parallax, that type of thing would have been way, way, way easier in Blender, actually. Not sure why I did it in Tahoma. I think I was kind of wanting to play around with the 3D view and see kind of how clunky it actually was. It's a bit clunky. For reasons that are hard to actually describe. It's things like a great example. Okay, so this is an example of the kind of thing that nobody who isn't a pretty experienced practitioner would even think about. Okay? It's when you get into it a little deeper that you find these things happening. So what I'm talking about is you go into the 3D space and you say, let's say we spread out 4 layers. So you've got a background and then maybe a couple characters each on their own layer, which is exactly what I did yesterday. What you don't think about is the fact that the layer in front, the character needs to talk, let's say. So then I put a layer over here to the right, so it'll be composited over top of just the mouth. Well, the problem is, what you don't know is, this only works if you move it in 3D space. So you're sitting here drawing on this layer going, why isn't it showing? Why don't I see it? And it's because in 3D space, the other layers are in front. Now, I could have forestalled that problem by not moving the layers forward toward the camera, but actually moving them back and then scaling them up. You'd have gotten the exact same effect, but new layers that you added would be placed at 0 in Z space and therefore be in front. It's just the darndest thing that, like I said, you'd never even think about it until you're in a pickle. And then it's further complicated because the mouth may in fact need to be locked to the layer that has the character body that, you know, is doing the talking. Of course, the way to do that in Tahoma, in my opinion, most of the time, is to open up the schematic and just basically rewire the layers so that one is the child of the other as it needs to be. Whoops, wrong. I'm in the wrong layer again. Okay, let's go here. And a little sloppy there, Dave. So what time is it? Man, it's afternoon? Sheesh, I think I'm going to go have me a brewski soon. Get ready to hang out a bit with my woman. So, let's just keep rocking. And now what I'm going to do is grab this, move its center point. Whoops. Okay, that's not what was supposed to happen. Move the center point to here, and then just kind of wrinkle that out like that. Okay, B key. And now let's go back here, and we've got this edge here. Okay, so maybe you could argue onion skins would not be the stupidest thing ever. Okay, so watch what I'm going to do. Yeah, this is an example where probably doing the onion skin thing is like not the dumbest idea. Zuko just said, okay. Zuko, you've been very quiet today. You haven't been chirping a lot. How you doing there, buddy? Doing all right? All of your layers are connected to the table, as you can see from the table text in the column header. Yes, I'm not even going to actually try to fully interpret that for the sake of the people watching. Other than for me to say there's more than one way to lock columns together in Tahoma. Like the most obvious way that is to just grab them and make them into a sub-column. Where's my... collapse? No. Is it? Yeah, I guess it is collapse. Poof. Yeah. So you can group columns that way, and that's really powerful. I mean, there's a lot of capabilities if you sort of think it through, ways that you can use sub sheets. They used to call them sub X sheets. Maybe they still do. I don't know. So I'll go ahead and suffer through having onion skins on the screen for a bit, because it actually does seem to be kind of helpful here. Okay. This is where it gets confusing. It's like I have to flip back and forth anyway just to see. So I'm thinking this kind of goes here, and maybe with a slight curve there towards the bottom. So I don't know. See, the problem with being dyslexic is that I can look at this and I think that the new line needs to be on the left of it when in fact it needs to be on the right. Now in this case I think I got it right, but just be aware that is an issue. Your brain flips things, and if I have to transpose something in 2 dimensions in my head, flip it and flip it, my brain can't do it very well, not at all. So hence being on the road, dealing with a map can be a royal pain in the butt. Of course everybody uses their phones nowadays, but back in the day. Okay, so let's turn this back on. Okay, so onion skin, thank you for being there for me. But I keep having to turn it off. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it this way. I'm just going to put in a shape like this. This is a transitional frame, so it really does not have to be that exacting. But so I'm going to just do that and then just cut this out for the beard. I think that'll work. All your layers. Okay, so you can now click that and choose another column to connect them. Like I said, I am not going to unpack that. I have to really think about what you just wrote. You can now click that. I assume you mean the header. And choose another column to connect them. So there's something in the menu that allows you to do the connecting up. I tell you the truth, this is my opinion, and it's going to be different from most people's probably. To me, once you have a node-based situation like a schematic, to me this just works. Like visually it makes perfect sense to connect these two together. Now if I move something, if I move this column with the animate tool, this column will move too. Okay, to me that is so simple and so intuitive. Any fancy schmancy interface shortcuts to accomplish the same thing here, to me almost seems wrong-headed. It's kind of nice, but usually if you're talking about connecting things and parenting, to me the sensible thing is to do it in an interface that visually shows you what the parenting really is. So in that sense, sub-X sheets are kind of different. Sub-scenes and sub-X sheets are more of an organizational tool, whereas connecting things through parenting of nodes is more of a, let's call it a structural. Did I just say structural? Sub-X sheets are more organizational, how you're organizing your work, keeping things compartmentalized, and using the schematic is more for structure, how things are supposed to actually be connected. But you can accomplish the same thing in both ways, in terms of, in practical terms. So, anyway, where am I here?
Where am I, friends? I don't even know where I am. I seem to have gotten lost in translation, when in fact there is no translation taking place. Perhaps I've simply gone insane.
All right, let's go back one frame. Okay, yeah, cool. Now I'm going to just say, something like that. And this is, by the way, talking about onion skins, another thing you could do that's probably better than onion skins. The idea is that I love to give the example of doing looping for a movie, dialogue looping, where you have to have an actor replace their lines. I learned years ago when I was trying to save money, making movies, that the way they do it in Hollywood, where the actor watches the video and then talks along with it, couldn't be, like, there is no stupider way to do looping. None. There's no way you could possibly be dumber than that. It's so slow, it's so clunky. But the key thing is, if the actor hears the line of dialogue and waits more than 1 second, they can't duplicate it. They won't. They'll inject some new inflection or something that makes it not work. Okay. What I learned was, if they hear the line and you tell them, don't think, turn your brain off, hear the line, immediately repeat it within 1 second. Line. Hey, let's go to the store. Hey, let's go to the store. If it's immediate, they'll nail it on the first try every time. They don't have to see the video. So why am I telling you this? Well, it's the same thing with this. If I just toggle between these frames for about a second, I can remember what I saw here. For about a second. It won't be very long before it's gone. But for about a second, I can kind of reproduce this. Now, to tell you the truth, to be fair, like so many cases, when I tell you guys something, the first example of it that I do turns out to be lackluster. Sorry. There it is. But as a general principle, the idea is to move quickly because of the limitations of human memory. The idea is that you want to get that line sketched in there really quick. And then what happens is it turns out it's kind of fun to work fast, actually. Crazy that. Crazy that. So this methodology, this method of inking or drawing, animating, is pretty good. I mean, it's really not a bad way to work. Literally one line at a time, and then you just connect them, Da-da-da-da-da. Like that. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not like it's the best way, but okay, so it doesn't seem like his jowls really changed orientation too much. Yeah, they really didn't. Between these two shots, it's more the expression probably in his eyes and stuff. So, okay, so whoop, there we go. Let's pull out and see if we're doing okay. Yeah, we're doing okay. So again, this transitional one here, let's fix a couple things just because we can. First of all, the curvature on this is lame as can be, so let's fix that. B key. Okay, pull back out. That's better, definitely. Okay, so now here, the bottom point here is obviously way whacked. I think I see the mailman coming. So I'm going to grab this and then take. Okay. So now, as you can see, even though we're not using vectors, it's still just as sharp as it was before. Certainly good enough. So, right. Cool. So that gets us to here. And now I got to touch up this. Okay, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Anything going on in the chat down here? If you read all three previous comments in order, it makes sense. It probably does, man. I'm sorry. There's a quicker way to connect layers. All of your layers are connected to the table. That makes sense. As you can see from the table text in the column header. Excuse me. Connected to the table. You can now click that and choose another column to connect them. Just a shortcut to using the schematic. Okay, so, So the header, meaning the header of the individual columns, I want to go ahead and grok this right now and get it understood completely permanently. Okay? What am I looking for? The first thing I would be looking for is something in the columns or the column header, which I don't know if that is this or this or this. But there's something in row 1, 2, or 3 that I'm about to click on. So which row is it in? And once I do, I assume it's in the individual column because I'm telling the individual column to be connected to another one in some way. So what am I looking for that I'm ultimately going to click? If I just click on the header, I mean, collapsing is how you make a sub X sheet. The column header is the column name, some buttons, a thumbnail, and the word table. The column header, click the word table. Where is the word table? Guys, am I blind? I don't see the word table anywhere. Sorry, dude. I know I'm thick. I know I'm slow. The column header is the column name. Okay, so this would be a column name, I suppose, VH. Some buttons, that would be these. A thumbnail. I'm looking straight at it and not saying, thank you. Thank you, bro. Got it. Okay. I am an idiot. This is so... Just for convenience, we're going to blame that on dyslexia too. Okay, so if I click on the word table, then I can link this column to another one. So I'm just going to select another column, and then I'm going to jump here in the schematic, and just as Darren said, what you can see is now this one is a child of this one. Cool. Sorry to be so dense, man. I tell you, it actually, it's kind of frustrating to be, like, I know I am a reasonably intelligent person. I know I am. And yet, in some ways, when it comes to my method of learning, it's like once I learn shit, I really know it. But my method, I can be pretty slow and thick sometimes. That is for sure. And it's a bit embarrassing, because here I just publicly demonstrated to everybody how I can literally be looking straight at it and not see it. It's right there. Table, table, table. It's like, Dave, how can you screw that up? That's like not even possible, yet somehow you've managed to do it. And then I criticize and rant about, the developers and stuff. Oh, my credibility is in the trash, man. In the trash. Absolutely gone. Gone forever. History. It's gone. Okay, so now let me see. I want to go back to... I just want to put a little indication in there. And we actually don't want these to line up too perfectly. Okay. Well, as I like to say, I'm just smart enough to realize how dumb I am. Okay, so back to work here, friends. Okay, so this looks good. That'll be good. That'll be good. I'm actually going to potentially put in a little nose wrinkle there. Okay, okay, I did not mean to do that. I'm going to save my work. I have no idea what I just did. I accidentally hit shift, and I thought I was hitting shift spacebar in order to zoom. And instead, I have literally no idea what I hit. My hand hit something else, and now I've got this red, I've got this red line, and then I mouse over it and it disappears. Guys, it really appears that the animator is devolving quickly here today. The animator is devolving. Okay, now I'm going to flip this so I can sort of do this symmetrically. And his eyes are something like that. We're going to go with that for the moment. And actually, it's 12:30. I think I'm going to wrap this up, guys. I think I'm going to wrap up for now. It's been a good session. I've been blabbing a lot, but it has been pretty productive, I must say. So, okay, let's take this. What do we have here? Let's go to the N key. Boy, I gotta tell you guys, I like the look and I like the animation. I'm actually kind of proud of the job I'm doing here. It's pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna render that and see what it looks like in the show, and then pretty much call it a morning.
Blasted kid. I mean, it's possible she came upon the campsite after Luka left.
Yeah, feels good.
And that blasted kid.
What am I seeing here at the beginning? Okay, so that's... Oh, the background image. Duh. Okay, just for completeness, I want to take that out. So I'm going to kill that. Leave it in there for reference purposes. Let's see if it... Okay, so I guess I have the option to... You guys will have to forgive me because I'm reacclimating myself to Tahoma. I've literally touched Tahoma for the first time in like almost 2 years, pretty much 2 days ago. So there's things I'm remembering. So it's the question of, well, if this is in here but it's actually turned off here, does it render, kind of thing. So that, I think I just solved my problem. So there we go. Yep. So let's just go back a bit and get the feel.
Morning? Are you trying to help her escape?
She's here somewhere. I found this near her campsite.
Highness, where? What campsite?
There was a smoldering fire. You couldn't miss it.
And that blasted kid.
I mean, it's possible
It's
she
moving
came
along
upon
nicely.
The campsite after
When
Luka
I
left.
when I revisited the show for the first time, this episode like a week ago, the first thing I did was chop down the edit. I cut 30 seconds out of it, so it all ran much faster, and I really like the pacing. Okay, it's really hard to explain something visual using, that's for sure, man, it is, and harder to understand while running a stream, concentrating. So this is Darren being very gracious to me right now. Very gracious. Thank you, sir. So anyway, I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and take a break. Probably get some lunch and whatnot. And you guys have a great day. Thank you for coming and hanging out. And I am going to end the stream in 5, 4, 3, 2,